This is my video submission for homework number 3. I'll be talking about how I was able to take my Raspberry Pi SD card and back it up to an image and then replicate that on another SD card and boot my Raspberry Pi from that. So just to explain things, this is my hardware setup that I have for this video. Right now I have the original SD card mounted. As you can tell, there are two partitions. There's the boot partition where all the device tree overlay files are at, and also just other configurations that will help it during the bootstrapping process. And then we have the other partition, which is the normal Linux root partition. So as you can tell, if I go to Home and Pi, you can see all of my files that I've been working on. So I have the WOT book and a Hello World program, and that was what existed on my Raspberry Pi originally. This is that original SD card. Let's see if I go to Properties and we look at its size. It's about 24 gigabytes. This is a 32 gigabyte SD card. The other space is I'm guessing is being taken up by the boot partition, and then just free space that hasn't been allocated. So this first step of the process that I used to be able to back up this SD card on this side of the screen was to go ahead and run sudo dd, and then for the input file was the volume of this actual device that's connected to my computer. So that's a USB device with how do I say that? An SD card adapter. And so that's just located in the dev folder under the SDA partition, kind of file representation of that. And then the output file, where I want this image to be written to, was just a blank file that I created in my home directory. So home, Christopolis, and then I called it backup.img. I ran this. I'm not going to run it now because I don't want to wait, another hour for that to complete. But it takes byte per byte all of the stuff that exists in dev/SDA and writes that to a file, img. But because it's doing the complete volume right here, so everything within the partition, it is getting all of the partitions and the way that they're organized and arranged. So this will help not just, copy the information that's happening in boot or the information that's happening in rootfs, but it'll do everything, including the free space. So when I ran this, I didn't run in verbose mode. There was no output. But the way that I knew it had completed successfully, if you go to my home directory and you look at backup img, and then I go ahead and I check out its properties, you can see that it is exactly 32 gigabytes big. So this is the backup image in file form. It's great. Now, I could technically use sudo dd and then swap the IF and OF parameters and put in a new SD card and hope everything works well, but that pesky idea of not running it in verbose mode and this taking, possibly hours to do because it's 32 gigabytes of just raw data that's being copied back and forth and dealing with a lot of unpredictable free space, I decided to use a tool that I'm familiar with a little bit more, which I don't happen to have open right now, but we can open right now. And that's the Raspberry Pi Imager. So when you're met at the Imager, it's a really nice tool. You can choose the OS, and it'll give you, the stock of Raspberry Pi OS or, versions. They used to be called Raspbian. But then you can go down to the bottom here and choose a custom image to flash on the desired SD card. So if I chose my backup image, which as we can see is 32 gigabytes, I selected that, and then I put in a new storage right here. Right now this is just the original disk of the Raspberry Pi, but if I had a different SD card that was of equal or greater capacity, I could write this, and as it's writing, it'll give you a nice little progress bar, and it'll even give you the option to verify to make sure that everything went over nicely and correctly. For the second part of this video, to prove that it actually works, I have my Raspberry Pi booted up right here, and as you can see, I have maybe you can see it, 128 gigabyte SD card in there with the written backed up image, and so it's connected to access point on my laptop, and if I SSH into that and put in my password, bear with me, I'm doing this with one hand. There we go. You'll see I log in just like any other Linux system, no issues. But then I type in ls, and you can see that maybe this will be more visible like this. You can see that in this home directory, I have, you know, a, a folder called bookshelf, dev, downloads, labs, pictures, templates, the WOT book, this hello world executable. And if we go over to the original source, we can see that that's exactly what's existing here in this root fs partition under home pi as well. So that's my video proving that I was able to back up my Raspberry Pi to a different card using, once again, the DD utility, and then just for kicks and giggles, I used the Raspberry Pi imager to write to another SD card so that I could get a little more visual feedback that it was going well.